Well, as soon as Melanie told me her topic for this series was the hero in the mirror, I thought of Maria Nemeth's book, The Energy of Money. I don't know if any of you have read this, but she's done a lot. I know Maria, and she's done a lot of work around prosperity and changing our attitudes about how we view money, how we view our prosperity, and especially what blocks us in creating the lives that we want to live. Melanie has given 2 great talks in these past 2 weeks on the topic of the hero. If you haven't listened to her talks, please go online, go to our website, and you can listen to both of them. The first one was on imagination and how we can use our imagination to create the lives that we want to live. And it's very, very powerful. But then she followed that up with last week on her Easter Sunday message, talking about this, the stone that was over the tomb that blocks the light, and how we remove the stone out of the way. And I think both of these talks really add to the point of what we want to create, but we have these blocks, and where did they come from? And more importantly, how do we get rid of them? Because sometimes I think we don't even recognize that we have blocks. It's just, sometimes we might even think, well, why is this happening to me again? Or it always happens that way. If you are thinking that, guess what? You've got a block. So we're going to talk a little bit about how to remove those today. We are heroes in our own lives. Just like the heroes of old, whether we are Hercules facing the Hydra or Perseus facing the Medusa, we too have challenges to overcome. I have to laugh. I looked those 2 things up in an old thing that maybe you've heard of. It's called an encyclopedia. I had to share that with you because I do have one. And it's kind of old, but it works. But we usually think that our challenges that are coming to us, that they're from the outside. Often we never realize how we are contributing to creating the blocks and the challenges we have in our life. The truth is that the real challenge is what we think about what is happening in our life. Because we all have challenges, we all have things to go through. And for some people it looks so easy, doesn't it? And for others it becomes, obviously there's a difference between a brick in the road and a brick wall. Some people love to live with brick walls. They just get into the drama and they just go all to pieces. And other people just look at that and go, oh, I got a challenge here. And they just step over it or walk around it, and it's no big issue. We have a choice as to what we want to, how we want to do things and how we want to approach life. I love the statement, we put it on the cover of your bulletin, from Joseph Campbell. He said, money is congealed energy, and releasing it releases life's possibilities. I like thinking about that, is that it's just an energy that we have about our prosperity. My husband used to really struggle with prosperity. It was an issue for him. He always said people would step over his dead body to give his wife money. He just, and finally, and well, this one I want to share that he said. He was really going through a tough time, feeling really bad, feeling like he really wasn't making money and he was working so hard. And finally he said he's got an image in his mind of people standing over his gravesite. And the headstone said he had a good credit rating. He said, it doesn't really matter. The only people that are worried about a good credit rating, well, we have a chance we want to be responsible for it. But it should not be the overwhelming control of our life. And Scott always had a good viewpoint of how to overcome with humor the challenges that he had in his life. And so we had a lot of fun together. So I wanted to share a little Scottism there with you. So if these possibilities that are released when we start working with our money issues, how can they help us overcome challenges? What are the financial possibilities you would like to release? Think about it a moment. Is it a new job? or a business you would like to start? Or is it something you would like to change in your life? I had a friend that really struggled with a boss she had with the company. And so she changed to a new company. She really liked the lady that hired her. She was really great with her. And then that lady got promoted and someone replaced her who is identical to the previous boss. And she realized, what was my lesson here? Is to learn how to deal with this personality type. And so she said, I really had to struggle with that, but I figured wherever I go, I was going to create the same thing, so I might as well deal with it now, right? You are filled with all kinds of possibilities. So what stops us? Maria Nemeth talks about, she calls it trouble at the border. It's the block that happens when we're moving ideas from the metaphysical, our imaginations, into the physical. And things come up that we may not even recognize as being blocks. But it's that rock that Melanie was talking about last week, that it just seems to appear every time we try to pursue increasing our prosperity or solving a prosperity challenge. What makes up that block, and more importantly, how do we release it? Maria talks about what we create is called the basic assumption we've made about ourselves in relationship to money. It's usually formed in childhood. It is a fundamental decision you made about life, and once made, you continually gather evidence to prove that it's true. So something you believe about yourself. And I remember, I'm also a certified hypnotherapist. I used to have a hypnotherapy practice. And I had one lady that kept saying her basic assumption in life was that she was always second best. No matter what she did, she was always second best. So we did a little regression, which is called back to the cause. And I remember when, I had no idea, I was just guiding it, and she was just going through it. And when I brought her out of hypnosis, I remember she goes, pennies? This is all about pennies? And I said, well, what happened? And she said, I went over with my brother to my grandmother's house. And my grandmother had pennies, and my brother had a penny collection. So she said, I couldn't go through the pennies until my brother went through them first to add to his collection. Nothing dramatic about this. It's very logical. You can see maybe you've done the same thing. And what she judged from that is I'm only deserved to be second best. And she said, over a bunch of pennies. And I said, so what are you going to do about it? And she said, now that I know that that's the judgment I made about myself, I'm changing it. And I said, good. Once you know what it is, then you have that power to change. Then you have the power to know that you have the ability to change anything that you have held on to. And sometimes we hold on to very, very desperately, don't we? A belief about ourselves. Some of these beliefs come from our families. I want you to think about this a little bit, about the families that you grew up in. What were the messages that you were hearing about money? I know one I always heard was something that was repeated by my mother about what her mother said, my grandmother. And she always said, if you want it badly enough, you will find a way to pay for it. And this is a message that I grew up with, and that's one reason. I know Scott didn't grow up with the same message, but it always managed to work for me because this is one of my core beliefs. If I want it badly enough, I'll find a way to create it. My mother wanted to be a school teacher. This is how it played out in her life. So she needed to go to college. This was during the Depression. It was like 1934, 1935. And my grandmother went with her. They didn't have much money. No one really had much money during the Depression. And this family had been sharecroppers. Even my grandfather took a job digging latrines. It was well paid, but nobody wanted that job. And he was very ashamed of the job, but my grandmother was the one that handled the business part of it, and she just treated it like a business. And so they were really working at kind of the low end of the economic spectrum. So here was my mother, and none of them had ever gone to college. And so they wanted to go to college, so my grandmother went with my mother to the closest college that had, it was a teacher's college, and again, my mother wanted to be a teacher. So they had a quarter system, not a semester system. And my grandmother went with her, and she wrote out a check for the $25. Imagine that as admissions. $25, and gave it to the people at the college, and said that check will be good by the end of the quarter. And they accepted it. So my mother was admitted to college. She was only 16. So you imagine how young she was. But here, if you logically think about all the odds that were not in her favor, she started college. She qualified for scholarships. It actually took her 15 years to complete her college education. But you can start teaching if you had a 2-year certificate. So she got her 2-year certificate and went on to be a school teacher. She became the first member of the family that ever graduated from college, and she also retired as a school teacher. If you want it badly enough, you'll find a way to make it happen. So what about you? What messages did you receive about money from your family? Let's talk about this a little bit. Maybe they're positive. Maybe they're negative. Maybe people came up with messages about, oh, there's never enough, or it's too expensive. Anybody have an idea that they want to share? Give me some ideas of some other programming, or even the positive ones that you got.
Only buy it if it's on sale.
Only buy if it's on sale.
My grandmother would always say, if you take care of your nickels and dimes, your dollars will take care of themselves.
There you go. That's a good one. That's a good one, Denise.
Mom would always buy things, especially at Christmas time, that she couldn't really afford, and then, have to go ahead and spend months going ahead and paying for it, down the road and all, so, like so many still do today.
Yeah, I actually even know some people that spend all kinds of money at Christmas and then just struggle for months afterwards to pay for it. So that's not an uncommon thing. You want to feel good and make your family feel good. I can understand. Somebody else? Any messages? Yeah.
My family of origin, my dad was kind of a hoarder of money. He had to control it. In my new family, with my new wife and my wife, she has a very Chinese attitude, where money is a thing that flows,
Right. So how are you with all of that? You're used to the saving?
I'm just kind of going for the ride,
It's how we show up with these messages. Was it something you had to unlearn?
Yeah, it's a challenge. It really is, trying to be supportive,
Right. It doesn't feel natural.
It doesn't feel natural.
Yeah, when we find out what our programming is, you can also recognize it when all of a sudden you feel like I'm out of my comfort zone. And so this is something new, and that's a little heads up. You got a message going on. Anybody else? Yeah, Jim.
I was always wearing out my shoes when I was a kid, because we lived on a farm that had a lot of gravel in the driveway and the yard that I played in. And, my shoes would wear out longer or faster than everybody else's. But they always had money somehow or other to buy a new pair of shoes for me. And I know that my mom and dad did without a lot of stuff, so that they made sure that I had shoes on my foot. They didn't tell me what they did, but I figured it out along the way. Those shoes didn't just fall out of the clear blue sky.
Yeah, yeah. Did you know that as a kid?
I'm sorry?
Did you know that as a child? Your parents were having to put forth some
I
effort?
think I probably sensed it. They didn't ever say that much, but I knew occasionally that there were things that they needed or wanted that they had to wait for until, in the farmer's case, you had to wait until they sold the crop.
Right.
And if there was money left over, then they bought stuff for themselves.
Right. And a lot of parents did that. Yeah.
I got a horticultural lesson when I was a kid because I found out that money does not grow on trees.
Right.
But I never lacked. I had an allowance, it wasn't a lot, but I never expected it to not be enough. And so I really never thought about money as not being enough, because I learned how to budget, and then it was just always enough.
There you go. There you go. It's interesting, these messages we get, isn't it? Yeah, Judy.
My mother had a nickel, she'd spend a dime. And then I learned from my mother-in-law, or as I watched her with her money, and she was actually the one that had money. She would not spend a dime herself. She was very, very wary about ever spending it. And from the two of them, I learned to enjoy my money, but to be responsible with it. So I put the two together, and
There you
it's
go.
really helped me.
You blended it.
Mhm.
Yeah, there's a way of doing that. Good for you. Good for you. Anybody else? Yeah, good.
Yeah, there's a saying in the Philippines which we kind of grew up on. It said if the blanket is a little bit too small, learn to curl.
The blanket is a little too small one to curl. I understand that. I understand that. Okay. I mean, we all get these messages, don't we? Is what do we do with them? And do we want to keep them? Or is it time to let them go? I want to share with you a story that the Buddha shared. It's from the book The Enlightened Mind, Anthology of Sacred Purpose by Stephen Mitchell, and he relates this story that was told by the Buddha. A man walking along a road sees a great river. Its near bank dangerous and frightening. Its far bank safe. He collects sticks and foliage and makes a raft, paddles across the river and reaches the other shore. Now suppose that after he reaches the other shore, he takes the raft and puts it on his head and walks with it on his head wherever he goes. Would he be using the raft in an appropriate way? No. A reasonable man will realize that the raft has been very useful to him in crossing the river and arriving safely on the other shore, but that once he has arrived, it is proper to leave the raft behind and walk on without it. This is using the raft appropriately. In the same way, all truths should be used to cross over. They should not be held onto once you have arrived. You should let go of even the most profound insight on the most wholesome teaching. The more so, unwholesome teachings, let go. I love that story. Because we seem to cling to, once we made these decisions, these basic assumptions about our life, we seem to hold on to them as if that is the truth for our entire life. And the major truth in that is that it served you for this time period, but there's more. There's more lessons to learn, and you may not need to use the raft. Again, leave it for somebody else to use. To move beyond our basic assumptions, she lists many, many, many things about what you can do, and I'm just going to pick out a couple of them. To move beyond the basic assumption about money, she said we must confront the twin sentinels on the hero's path: paradox and confusion. They are often represented as twin dogs of the interest of Buddhist temples. They are a reminder that we must embrace these states to gain enlightenment. As we dismantle these long-held beliefs about ourselves, we may become confused. And we basically don't like being confused. I don't know about you, but I don't like it one bit. Our mind really wants to, our conscious mind wants to know. We want to be in control. We want to be sure of ourselves. And so to rest in a state of confusion would be something that we would avoid at all costs. So that's why so many times we hold on to an idea or a basic assumption, even though it is not true about our lives anymore. As we dismantle these beliefs, what happens is we also disconnect from our identity. I had a lady in a support group that I led, and she finally looked at me, the group, and just said, "But if I'm not a victim, who am I?" She was so tied to being a victim in life that she didn't know how to be anything else. And I said, "Are you willing to try something different?" We had a little discussion about this when, like, the Wednesday night group, about when we change our identities. I went through it, and it was a tough time. When I retired and I was no longer a senior minister, and then my husband died, and now I'm a widow. Now who am I? All the things that I had used to define myself were gone, and I had to totally recreate a new identity for myself at this time. I love the Wayne Dyer statement, if you are what you do, when you don't, you aren't. That's kind of a paradox in itself, isn't it? If you are what you do, when you don't, you aren't. So it lets us know to create something more to ourselves besides the job, maybe besides the relationships. Who are we as our individual? I talked about my identity crisis, but maybe you've gone through that too. And that's why I love that butterfly of change, because basically we don't like to change, do we? We really don't. And we need to know, and I look with the butterfly, how much more beautiful that transformation was. We moved to a different level of knowing, a different level of being. Maria says that confusion gives you breathing room if we stay with it. It gives us the opportunity to leave old thoughts, judgments, memories, and feelings behind, just like the raft the Buddha talked about. They have served their purpose, and now it's time for a change. Be peaceful in that moment. Carol O'Connell always talks about I'm blanking on the word, trapeze. The two trapeze, and you have to let go of one before you can grab the next. And so you're dangling out there in nothing, suspended in the air because the other trapeze has not arrived yet. Can we feel comfortable just dangling in that unknown? It's a practice. It's a practice. A paradox arises often when we think about money. A paradox is a self-canceling statement or thought that forces the mind into sort of a logical gridlock. A typical paradox would sound like this. My name is Sydney. I live in East Cobb. Everyone who lives in East Cobb are snobs. I had someone tell me that, actually, and I said, no, wait a minute. She said, well, I met you and you don't act that way. And I said, there's a lot more people in East Cobb that don't act that way. Everyone she met, she had this judgment, oh, you're from East Cobb. You call it East Snob. And so she kept proving herself right over and over again. And I said, but she said, well, you don't act that way at all. Well, I live in East Cobb. So maybe what you thought is not true. And you think something different about the people in East Cobb. The way that Maria puts it, she said, when you think about a paradox, am I lying about this or am I telling the truth? As we wrap our minds about this, the person we heard this from actually was believing something that really is not true. Because there are a lot of people in East Cobb. And I've not met anybody but I have met one person like you said was a snob, but only one. But it's interesting how we get caught up in these, that we just actually believe them over a period of time. The true challenge is to be comfortable in not knowing, to embrace the questions instead of being so attached to the answers. It's not what we know, it's how we hold on to what we know about money that gives us the challenges. We constantly want to prove ourselves right. Is it okay to be wrong? Is it okay to be wrong? Because if you are wrong, then you have an opportunity for something else to come forward. A new way of thinking, a new way of being. Heroes develop the capacity to sit with paradox and confusion as they occur. Heroes do not jump to premature conclusions and allow the gap of not knowing to be there as much as possible. Because when we don't know, it opens up a way of finding a new something to come through, a new way of relating to our money. I mean, some people, one thing she always suggests, Maria, about balancing your checkbook to the penny. Just to know that you are a steward of your own finances. Do you really know where you stand? If you don't know where you stand, then there are all kinds of chances that you're going to overspend, spend that dime instead of a nickel, and you know, then you're charged with late fees, which even puts you, or overdrawn fees, which even puts you more in debt. So there's, like I said, many things that she talks about, that being honest with ourselves and letting go of these processes allows us for new answers to come and appear. As we release these old beliefs, we allow ourselves to move into a new way of being. So thinking about confusion and paradox, I thought, let's take those into meditation and see how well we can manage